Untoward. That's the nothing personal word of the day for Thursday, September 4th, 2025. Today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Untoward. It's a very, very good word to use. It makes you sound stuffy and it makes you sound smart. I did nothing untoward here. It sounds a little lascivious, maybe even slightly prurient. But it just means unexpected and inappropriate or even inconvenient. And that's the word of the day, because when you think about your behavior, is it ever untoward? The Los Angeles Clippers would have you believe that they did nothing untoward. Let me go back to yesterday. Oh, what a day. It was late December 1963. Pablo Torre finds out. Pablo Torre, in his first show as a licensed show with The Athletic, unveiled the possibility that Steve Ballmer may have done a few things that were untoward, not befitting the sixth or seventh richest man in the world. And it created a firestorm, and we at Nothing Personal were a part of it because we did the show with Pablo. It was Amin Al-Hassan, it was me, it was Pablo. And we discovered a bunch of things. We found out a bunch of things. And it caused one of my favorite activities, the scurrying around of lawyers and PR people saying, statements. We need lots of statements. Of course, when you're approached by a journalist like Pablo, hey, we're going to be doing a show. We'd like you to comment on the fact that you circumvented the salary cap. Would you like to be included in the show? And the Clippers said, all right, good idea. And they had the statement that was included in Pablo Torre Finds Out, the show that was released yesterday, September 3rd at 5 a.m. And that was a run-of-the-mill PR statement. Neither Mr. Ballmer nor the Clippers circumvented the salary cap or engaged in any misconduct related to aspiration. Any contrary assertion is provably false. I would like to believe that Steve Ballmer has good people around him. I'd like to believe that his PR people would consult with attorneys. But boy, oh boy, if you're going to put in a statement that something is provably false, that doesn't mean you disagree with it. It doesn't mean you vehemently disagree with it. It means that you can prove that it's false, like with documents. Or is it the lack of documents? Only in very special scenarios and circumstances can you prove something by the absence of it. The way that we proved that Kawhi Leonard didn't do squat for aspiration for $28 million, that seems pretty telling. But to prove that you had nothing to do with it, do you just not show a document that shows you not having anything to do with it? Or do you show a document that actually would say this endorsement agreement between Kawhi Leonard and aspiration was done over the objection of Steve Ballmer? And there's emails back and forth that shows that Steve Ballmer said to aspiration, I just invested in your company, and I got to tell you, Kawhi Leonard is the worst endorser of all time. You'd have to be out of your mind to endorse a guy that doesn't talk, that isn't going to do anything. And by the way, I invested in this company. You're going to give Kawhi Leonard $28 million, but Leonardo DiCaprio and Drake and Orlando Bloom and Robert Downey Jr. give them like way less than that while making them do stuff? That's my kind of company. Now, if you had that, that would be provably false, maybe. Although it would be quite a cool paper trail to set up. But it's funny, that statement that came with the show. My guess is that when the Clippers and Steve Ballmer were approached with this story, they called up the NBA. The NBA said, no idea, haven't heard of it, weren't contacted. They thought to themselves, it's just a podcast. I don't even know what a podcast is. It can't be that big. It's not like there's going to be 25 million people who are paying attention to something on X, or hundreds of thousands. Or it's really Swift and Kelsey-like attention to something. There's no way. So I don't need to get the lawyers. We're all good. Then about 26 hours ago, it happened. The show gets released, and before you know it, it puts the Vi in viral. It is, as Matthew Coca had properly predicted upon watching the show prior to our show, saying, NBA Twitter can be quite something. This has a chance to have some legs, ZZ Top, and it did. So, the Clippers and Steve Ballmer and the NBA said, okay, we're going to need to address this in a way that we didn't think we'd have to address it. So let me start with me, the NBA said. Here's what we're going to say, Stevie boy. We're going to say that we're aware of the show and we shall commence an investigation. Believe me, it was hard for the NBA to say to themselves, we are going to make David Samson and Nothing Personal right in their wait to see after less than a day. But they did that because we told you yesterday's show, our official wait to see is the NBA will investigate Ballmer. That's already a yes. The fastest wait to see since Tuesday will follow Monday. But that's not it. The NBA left it at that. Very simple because they can. MLB was always very good at that. Simple statements. Hey, we'll check this out. That's it. But then Steve Ballmer got together, I am quite confident, not with his PR team. He got together with his attorneys and said, there seems to be like fraud going on here. There's a guy who I invested with who just pled guilty for 2 counts of wire fraud. And I really don't want to have another salary cap circumvention. I had one of those already in 2015. Don't want to do that again. I think I better come up with something a little more substantial to release. Can you help me? So the lawyers said, let's work on statement 2. Now, Nothing Personal is a big fan of statement 2s because statement 2s are always very telling. Statement 1s are fraught with emotion and quick with the trigger finger. Statement 2s is when you realize, I'm going to have to figure out a better way to explain that which I may or may not have done. So the statement 2 that came out yesterday afternoon while Pablo, Amin, and I were live on Levitard's YouTube, statement 2 was outstanding. I want to draw your attention to 2 parts of statement 2 because otherwise we would need a 4-hour show. There is nothing unusual or untoward. Word of the day alert. There is nothing unusual or untoward about team sponsors doing endorsement deals with players on the same team. Let me stop you there because they're referring to what I uncovered during the show live while taping the show. When I saw in the contract between Kawhi Leonard and Aspiration that a condition precedent to there not being a termination is Kawhi Leonard being on the Clippers. And I thought, you don't see that every day. And of course, there were Twitter sleuths and other such uninformed people on the internet saying, oh, that's wrong, David. This is very common. Let me digress and tell you, I may have gotten that wrong. You do a $25,000 appearance deal for the corner grocery store that happens to sponsor the 5th inning behind the plate local signage. I've seen it. It's true. The auto dealership on the corner of US 1 and 27. Yep, local. Give me a car. I'd like a car in Miami, please. Yep, I'm happy to do a commercial. Hey, can we use the Marlins marks? No, thank you. You'll have to give us more money for that. All right, I'll just use a blank uniform. Of course, there are players on the team who are approached by local sponsors who do deals. 100% common, nothing unusual. But folks, a $28 million sponsorship deal over 4 years, $7 million a year. I've had some famous players, some very famous players play for me. Nope, never had it, never seen it. Aspiration is not a local Los Angeles company. They were trying to save the world, for crying out loud. Their whole point in the Robert Downey Jr. commercial was clear. Their whole point and goal was zero. They were doing deals with the Red Sox, with the Clippers. They were raising money from around the world and spending money around the world. A local grocery store? Give me a break. There is no chance, and I am more than happy to say it stronger than anybody else, there is no chance that Steve Ballmer invested in a company $50 million of his money, and we know that happened. We have the documents. Pablo. There is no chance that Steve Ballmer made an investment into that company, sat next to the founder of that company who had done a $300 million sponsorship deal with the Clippers. They were like bosom buddies, like Hanks and Scolari sitting at a press conference. And Aspiration just looks around and they say, oh, I've got the perfect plan. This is an epiphany of all epiphanies. We don't need to talk to Steve Ballmer about it. Why would we? Let's sign Kawhi Leonard to a $28 million 4-year deal. Do you realize how absurd that is? I don't care if Aspiration, if they're convicted or they've pled guilty to fraud or it was a Ponzi scheme, whatever the case is with Aspiration. In reality, do you think it's possible that the people at Aspiration did not say, we need a celebrity endorser. Let's think of the most famous person we can. Wait a minute, I got a guy. He plays for the Clippers. Oh, I think Steve Ballmer owns the Clippers because we're the biggest sponsor of the Clippers. But we don't need to talk to Steve Ballmer about it. Why would we? For Steve Ballmer to say that he had no idea that Kawhi Leonard was doing a $28 million endorsement, a no-show job as characterized by someone at Aspiration. And Steve Ballmer, who invested $50 million into the company only months before, had no idea. It belies all credibility. But the lawyers, they kept going with the statement. Because if I say there's nothing unusual or untoward about team sponsors doing endorsement deals with players on the same team, the lawyers would say that's a true statement. And I agree. That's a true statement. Let me give you another true statement that the Clippers released. Neither Steve nor the Clippers organization had any oversight of Kawhi's independent endorsement agreement with Aspiration. To say otherwise is flat out wrong. You don't think a lawyer wrote that? Let's examine the wording, please. Neither Steve nor the Clippers had oversight of Kawhi's endorsement agreement. Well, you got me there because there's no contractual privity. We showed it on the show. It's a contract between Aspiration and Kawhi Leonard. The are not mentioned in the contract other than under, hey, you better play for the Clippers if you want to get paid. But Steve Ballmer can absolutely legally and properly tell you in a statement that he had no oversight of the contract. He had no contractual privity to the contract. You can't have any oversight to it. But the word oversight is fascinating because it's so limiting. I wonder why the statement didn't say neither Steve nor the Clippers organization had any influence of Kawhi's independent endorsement agreement. That would be good. Had any knowledge of Kawhi's independent endorsement agreement. That would be good. Oversight? That's clear. That's lawyerly. Let me tell you what else they decided to say. The Clippers take NBA compliance extremely seriously, fully respect the league's rules, and welcome its investigation related to Aspiration. They don't welcome the investigation related to Ballmer. They welcome the investigation related to Aspiration, which, don't worry, NBA, the DOJ and the SEC got you covered. I think you ought to consider being slightly more worried about the league's investigation of you. And as for you taking compliance extremely seriously, I would like to remind you that Steve Ballmer himself, after buying the team in 2014. 1 year later, was fined $250,000 when he pursued DeAndre Jordan. Ballmer said, "We believed we were doing that the right way, and any circumvention was inadvertent." Well, thank God, because we'd hate to believe that the circumvention was purposeful. I always liked it when people committed. It covers all sorts of sins, doesn't it? That was inadvertent. Who knew? He told the Orange County Register at that time, "In our effort to support our players in every way possible, we as an organization must be diligent in complying with the CBA." I understand the 10 years passes. People get tired. People lose their memory. I can't remember what we were talking about, but just pretend we're talking about the Clippers and Steve Ballmer and what they did 10 years ago versus what they did 7 years later. I assume that people remember that the Clippers got fined again when they were even going after Kawhi Leonard, when Doc Rivers made some comments and they were fined $50,000 for Doc Rivers' comments. I know you remember that, but the good news is that Statement 2 wants you to make sure you know that the Clippers take NBA compliance extremely seriously. Please understand that I've now gone through 2 out of 5 paragraphs of Statement 2. There is a whole lot of making sure that we understand that Steve Ballmer had nothing to do with the fraud and that he felt defrauded as well by his partners. But that's not what PTFO is about. PTFO, the first half hour of that episode, talked about the scammers, talked about what these 2 Harvard-educated, not Pablo, Democratic strategists, youngest speechwriter ever under Clinton, what they did, and how one of them, one co-founder, has pled guilty to wire fraud. Covered. Why people do not understand the difference surprises me. So you can imagine that I was shocked and dismayed when Mark Cuban entered the fray. I get wanting to stay relevant. Trust me, I get it. I understand what it is to be an owner, then all of a sudden you're not. I understand when you think you're going to be the governor of a team or the alternate governor and you're neither. I understand when you think you're going to be running basketball operations and Samson had to tell you you're not and you're not, but you want to stay around. So you send a tweet every once in a while, which Mark Cuban did in response to the PTFO. The episode that I believe from his tweet, he didn't watch. Because what PTFO did is they released a 4-minute clip. And then all of a sudden, Mark Cuban stepped up and said, "I'm on Team Ballmer." That's a hell of a statement right off the jump. As much as I wish they circumvented the salary cap, first, Steve isn't that dumb. If he did try to feed Kawhi Leonard money, knowing what was at stake for him personally and his team, do you think he would let the company go bankrupt? Knowing all the creditors would be visible to the world. Let me stop there, Coca. That's just the first paragraph of what Mark Cuban did, and then got into some sort of Twitter beef with Pablo while we're recording a show live. And I'm reading this tweet and I'm thinking, Mark Cuban's a smart guy. I'm not sure I understand if he understands what he's saying. Because let me help. Are you saying that Steve isn't that dumb to circumvent the salary cap when we know Steve already circumvented the salary cap? So was he way dumber 10 years ago? I would say that 10 years did not make him more dumb. I would say that he's one of the best investors, as cataloged on the episode, in the last 20, 25 years. So let's not talk about him being dumb. But 10 years ago, circumvented. But now, Mark Cuban says, do you think he would let the company go bankrupt? Let me make sure I get this straight. Is Mark Cuban saying that when the company goes to its investors, any company goes to you, Mark Cuban, you're an investor, and the company's losing money. The company may be full of scammers. And they come to you and they say, hey, we need another cash infusion, Marky Mark. Any chance you'll do it? Do you say yes every time? Do you know how rich people get rich? They don't throw good money after bad. Now, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, Steve. I'm saying that you invested, and believe me, I don't believe this, but you invested in aspiration as a real way to make the world a better place, one tree at a time. And then you realized, this doesn't seem like a good idea. I can't seem to figure out the financials. They never even told me that they were signing Kawhi Leonard to a $28 million deal. What kind of idiots would sign Kawhi Leonard to a $28 million deal? I can't invest more money in this company. Now, if that's his story that he's sticking to, then how is it that Mark Cuban would think that he'd want to put money in to save them from bankruptcy? And on a side note, the amount of money that would be required, rich people don't stay rich by making stupid decisions and doubling down on those stupid decisions. But are you saying that he would just put that money in to cover it up? It was already past the point. They had already stopped. It is very clear to me that aspiration had stopped paying the bills to the Red Sox, stopped paying the bills to the Clippers, stopped paying the bills to the Forum owned by Ballmer, stopped paying the bills to Kawhi Leonard. Are you telling me that Steve Ballmer should have just invested more money to pay all the bills, or just invest enough money to pay Kawhi Leonard? Interesting. And the fact that Mark Cuban would have this point of view when, for a living, well, not for a living, but certainly for ego, he did a show called Shark Tank where he was making investments left, right, center. Did all of those work? Did some of the companies come back and say, I could use a little more cash now that the cameras start rolling? And Mark said, no, thank you. Appreciate that. I'll take my losses and move on. Do you know how many times I've seen that in my career where people just say, Ganoog, I'm not taking any more losses. I'm fine. Which would argue, if Steve Ballmer said, let them rot, that he knew that somehow Uncle Dennis would be on a list of creditors. It's funny how people think from time to time, though. I don't think that Steve Ballmer had that in his head. I think that Steve Ballmer has to find a way to get Kawhi Leonard that $28 million, and I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how, in fact, he does it. And when a list of creditors comes out, the aspiration guys, a Chapter 11 list of creditors, folks, is released and comes out from the company. Hey, just so we're aware, these are people we owe money to. This is the list. Is it possible? Absolutely. That when the company was going down, that Steve Ballmer and Uncle Dennis and Aspiration got together and said, what do we want to do here? Or was it just Aspiration and Uncle Dennis and Kawhi who got together and said, what should we do here? And they left Steve Ballmer completely out of it, which would be strange because Steve Ballmer is an investor in the company. And before you worry about the unsecured creditors, because every one of those creditors is unsecured, that means they're last online to get money. Secured creditors are first online. You do an endorsement deal, unsecured. Side note, player contracts, unsecured creditors, which is why the union doesn't want teams to go bankrupt. Because in theory, if a team goes bankrupt, then they could say, hey, we are releasing all contractual obligations, and specifically those of players who have guaranteed contracts who stink. Which is why it doesn't happen. Leagues do not let, and it's happened in my career where the Orioles, Eli Jacobs, that team was sold in bankruptcy. Frank McCourt had a problem, but it wasn't bankruptcy. Tom Hicks had a problem that was bankruptcy, but it actually ends up that the teams aren't bankrupt. It's the person, and therefore the contracts get paid. I hope you stayed with me on that. The purpose of that side note was just to tell you player guaranteed contracts are covered when they are professional athletes. But in the real world, when you're an unsecured creditor, you have a problem when you're an unsecured creditor of a company that goes bankrupt because you're on line with a lot of people, and the odds of you getting money or all of the money that's owed to you, very small. As a matter of fact, I hope that you're having a synapse alert right now. Do you recall that there are Major League Baseball teams and hockey teams and basketball teams who did local TV deals with a company called Sinclair, Bally's, Regional Sports Networks? Do you recall that on bankruptcy, all those contracts disappeared? And when they were redone at a lower number. Is this sounding familiar? Yet for Kawhi Leonard, hey, 28's 28, $7 million a year. Pay me my money. Mark Cuban kept going. He kept going in his tweet. He said it's sad that Pablo Torre didn't take the time to find out how these scammers pulled off their scam. The idea that the default is Ballmer is the bad guy is going to backfire on him. Well, I don't quite see it that way, Mark. And the reason I don't see it that way is that if you watch the show, the entire first part of the show is about the scammers scamming. And the point of the circumvention of the salary cap comes from, wait for it, an employee of the company. And you think that Pablo Torre, an investigative journalist with his reputation on the line, is going with a source that he hasn't properly vetted? Multiple sources? Watch the episode. You see a source on tape, modulated voice, who says the words circumvent the salary cap. This wasn't Pablo making a conclusory statement or me on the show. This is what was said by the employee. What we said on the show is, wow, that's interesting. The employee says circumvent the salary cap, and the contract says $7 million a year for 4 years, not to do squat. A no-show job. Interesting. Wait a minute, we have another document Pablo discovered that shows the investment that Steve Ballmer made into the company, and then all of a sudden there's a deal that is so out of market that, it makes you think, with Kawhi Leonard, one of Steve Ballmer's players. It is very important when you understand that there are so many podcasts out there, you have to understand the credibility of the underlying source of your information. And this is not me because Pablo Torre is my friend. He is. This is not because I work with him, which I do. This is not because I was on the show, which I was. This is because I'm giving you the analysis as a former executive, as a current attorney. Don't practice, but a member of the bar. I always have to say that. I don't need to say that, but I feel like I have to say it. Because the analysis in this case was as clear as day. So what's next? What's next is that Mark Cuban will be Mark Cuban. That's fine. What's next is that the NBA is going to investigate. And believe you me, I'm waiting for the phone to ring. Whether it is Pablo who gets called, whether it is the aspiration people, they will have to do something. But their first call clearly is going to be to Steve Ballmer. And they're going to have to talk through what the best way to get out of this is. Because there could be owners who are out there saying, excuse me, Adam Silver, I am not happy with Steve Ballmer. This proves the point that he is using his money. This is what we tried to prove with the Dodgers all the time and could never get the proof because they did everything according to the rules because that's how good Andrew Friedman is. But they were using their money as a sword that was absolutely killing other teams. Steve Ballmer using his money as a sword is not what his partners in the NBA want. And if they found out that Steve Ballmer was doing something that is even slightly against the rules, to say nothing of this, which is a blatant violation of the rules, owners could be looking for a pound of flesh. So the question is, will they get one? And the answer is, they absolutely will not. It's not going to be a pound, you see. It's going to be about a quarter pound. And what a quarter pound is that is a fine that will not change Ballmer's life because he'll pay for it out of what's in his nightstand. It will be the loss of draft pick or picks. But there will be a fall guy with the Clippers. Just you wait. The same way Kevin McHale was a fall guy for Glenn Taylor, who himself got suspended but not forced to sell the team. They cannot afford to cross Steve Ballmer too significantly, but they've got to rein him in, and that's what this investigation by the NBA is going to end up leading to. Hey, guys, we're teaming up with Jackpocket, America's #1 lottery app. You can order Powerball, Mega Millions, and scratch-off tickets in just a couple taps. New customers, they're giving you $5 in lottery credits. Download the app, opt in, and don't forget to use code SUPERFAN when signing up. So go grab the Jackpocket app, use that code. This is it, and this is it. The next jackpot is $1.7 billion. Believe me, get the Jackpocket app. Use Superfan as the code. You're going to get $5 in lottery credits. Why wouldn't you spend it trying to win $1.7 billion? You would. How about the review, Coca? No matter what happens, I'm going to watch a movie every day. I don't care what kind of day I'm having. I don't care how many responsibilities I have off or on the air. I'm watching a movie. And Thursdays are my favorite. We are reviewing one movie from my top 100 list, which can be found at davidsamsonpodcast.com. Go to that website. You get merch. There's great merch that you can wear. Don't forget to keep sending me photos of wearing the merch out in the world. I love to see that. You can also find a document in there at davidsamsonpodcast.com. The document shows everything about our show. Each day we do a pick of the day. We do a wait to see. We have a word of the day. And we show you what we've done every day for 1,349 episodes. We want accountability. Unlike so many of the shows out there, we will always be accountable. So go to davidsamsonpodcast.com. See my top 100 movies. That's also in there. And every Thursday, for 100 Thursdays, I'll be reviewing one movie from the list. Today, it's movie number 49, War of the Roses. For people who have listened to the show before, you know that that's the movie I took the mother of my children, my future wife-to-be, the night before we got engaged, took her to see War of the Roses in 1989. It's a movie with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito is a lawyer who directed the movie, about a couple who meets, falls in love, has kids, falls out of love, goes to war because neither one wants to move out of their house. I've got a bit of advice for people going through a divorce. Get through it as quickly as possible, as painlessly as possible, because the sooner you can start again. It's your best opportunity because life is short. Fighting over a house? But man, in this movie, they fought and they fought and they fought. It may sound crazy that I would want to see that movie prior to getting married, but when you're the child of divorce, I guess that's what you do. And there are certain lines in this movie. The movie ages perfectly. Think about how old it is. It is 36 years old, double high. And it is as relevant today as it was then. It's not one of those special effects movies that all of a sudden looks old in hindsight. It is current and perfect. Maybe the credits look a little old, the opening credits, but that's it. Danny DeVito explains how important it is to smoke a cigarette. Think about that. He stopped smoking for 13 years until something happened in this movie. The character did. The lawyer is telling the story of the Rose family through his lens as the attorney for Michael Douglas. And there will never be a more famous line than, "I've got more square footage." Just make sure you watch it. All right, next Thursday, we are going to review number 87, Ex Machina. I really do love that movie, and I'm so happy I get to watch new movies. I always tell everyone what I'm going to watch and review the next day, just so you can be along with me. One of you sent me, and please get to me at David P. Samson on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, nothingpersonal.npds. There's so many ways to reach me. And thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel, Nothing Personal with David Samson. Someone told me to watch Katrina, Come Hell and High Water. I will get that done. I still have an episode left. I will get it done and review it tomorrow. If I ever took a break, which I don't like doing, I'm wondering how much more content I would watch. I wonder what Roman Anthony's going to do for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Well, you may recall Roman Anthony's the Boston Red Sox player. He's now on the injured list at a very poor time for the Red Sox, and he's out 4 to 6 weeks with the famous oblique strain. I have a lot of experience with oblique strains, and 4 to 6 weeks is a generous timetable. Oblique strains are very tough because you can't test them without re-hurting them and re-aggravating them. Because what happens is when you swing a bat with a violent swing, it impacts your oblique. Think about the torque of your body. I'd like you to picture me swinging a bat right now and understanding that I would pull just about every muscle I have in my body were I to do it. But when you're in baseball shape, sometimes these oblique strains happen when you're tightly wound, and it ends with a lot of time not swinging a bat. Alex Cora, the manager of the Red Sox, assured us we're going to try to get him back as soon as possible, but we don't know. And he's right. Oblique strains are far different than any other injury in their, like if you have a hamstring and it's grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and that's according to how bad the tear is, it's pretty clear what the timeline is, what the rehab is, and how we do it. Oblique strains are a lot like back soreness and back pain. It's super hard to know how long a player is going to be out, but experience would tell you 4 to 6 is going to be the minimum. Well, here we are on September 4th. 4 to 6 weeks would mean the beginning of October to the middle of October. If he goes to the late end of that, that would be like the LCS already. Him playing in the regular season is simply not going to happen. Wait to sees are part of what we do. And if we're right, we'll let you know. If we're wrong, we'll always revisit it. Roman Anthony won't play another game this season. And that is a official wait to see. And I'm very sorry for him and for the Red Sox, because the Red Sox right now have a 4.5 game lead in the wild card. They're still chasing the Blue Jays. They're tied with the Yankees for the best record to have that top wild card, to host that 2 out of 3 at your home stadium. But listen, there are teams on their tail. Do I think the Red Sox will still make the playoffs? Yes, I do. Do I think Roman Anthony's absence will impact their ability to go deep into October? I don't necessarily, as a matter of fact, believe that. However, there is one thing to be noted. When you sign a player to a long-term guaranteed contract, when that player's been in the big leagues for 69 minutes, you are subject to a problem that comes with any injury or lack of performance during the course of that player's first 3 years. You are overpaying that player. There's no longer discounts. Roman Anthony did not give a discount to the Red Sox when he signed that long-term deal. And the assumption by the Red Sox is he would be a productive player. No bumps in the road. Boom, you've got a bump in the road. Any ability or chance for him to outperform his early contract of this huge long-term deal he signed, it's gone now. He's out with this injury. And if he misses a playoff run and the rest of the regular season, that counts when you go to arbitration. When a player's been in the league 3 years, you get to say to the arbitrators, hey, man, this player was on the injured list. This player had broken service, because you get service time when you're injured. But what it means is he didn't perform. Therefore, he doesn't have the bulk that he would have had, home runs, runs batted in, etc. Therefore, you get paid a little less in arbitration. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm telling you how it is. Arbitrators award less money to players who have had injuries during their previous years before arbitration. Any sort of lack of performance is even less discounted than injuries. It's crazy how the system works, but that's the system. So when you sign a long-term deal with a player, you've got to take into account, well, wait a minute. What if the player's on the IL twice in 3 years? Well, therefore, if he keeps playing at the level that we think he's going to play at, or that he's played at for like 1 game, but he's got 2 stints on the injured list, and one of them is the minimum 2 weeks, but one of them is like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, wait a minute, we've got to take that into account. You go to the agent and say that, and the agents say, pound sand. You pay my player as though he goes straight through and outperforms every single day and never gets bad, never slumps. The Red Sox have now found out what it is. Do they care? It's a fun question. I actually don't know, but I used to. It is very, very hard, Coca, for me to do this next bit on the Mets. But I'm going to do it because I know, Coca, that this bothers you. And I don't. Let me just start. 4869. Senga stinks. Thank you. That will be my segment on the New York Mets today. No, I'm just kidding. There's so much to talk about. Let me take it from a different angle. 4996. Ryan Helsley stinks. Are we good? Can we just have that as our Mets segment? Helsley allowed 3 runs in yesterday's loss to the Tigers. Do you know that in 14 games that he's been in since the trade deadline, when the Mets were making this super pen like a bunch of Avengers, he's got 4 blown saves, 3 losses, and an 11.5 ERA. If that were not a player that you acquired at the deadline, that player would be released. That player would be off the team. The Mets don't have the guts to do it because it makes them look so bad. You got to have the guts, Stevie. Call up David and say, dude, we can't give this guy the ball anymore. It's sucking the life out of our team. To which David Stearns, the president of baseball ops, would say to Steve Cohen, you think that's the problem? I can't get any of my starters except the young ones to give me any bulk at all. As a matter of fact, Stevie, I want to send Senga down to the minor leagues. Wait a minute, what? Senga, the guy who started the season doing so well, the all-star back in 23, the guy who the first 13 starts of this season had an ERA under 1.5, that's the guy you want to send down to the minor leagues? Are you kidding me? Well, wait a minute, Steve. You got to get the facts here. Senga got hurt. Do you remember when he strained his sphincter muscle? Remember that? He came, oh no, you're right, Coca, sorry. It was his hamstring. Remember, he strained his hamstring and he came back, and then when he came back, he couldn't get anyone out? Remember that? So, if a guy gives up 12 runs in his first 13 starts, but then 26 runs in the last 9 starts, is that sending a guy to the minor leagues? No. Do you know that Senga has to give permission because of the number of years he's been in the big leagues? You're not allowed just to option anyone to the minor leagues. They have to either have minor league options or they have to have a certain level of service time that they have not yet attained. But once you attain a certain level of service time, you get the right to tell your team, minor leagues, forget about it. The union collectively bargained to allow a player to refuse a minor league assignment. Now, a player can agree to a minor league assignment, and what players do when they agree to a minor league assignment is they have a public statement through their agent, sometimes through themselves, that say, oh, I just want to go down there, get my head straight. Obviously, I'm not happy with my performance, but I want to do what's best for the team, and having me down in the minor leagues just for a hot second makes perfect sense. That's what a player says. Do you know what the team says? Please accept this assignment because we're not giving you the ball. We're going to let you rot. We're not giving you an at-bat if you don't accept the minor league assignment. As a matter of fact, we might just release you because you can still release a player if they won't take a minor league assignment. No problem. You just pay them. But the thing about Senga, with people of that service time, you're paying him anyway, whether he's pitching for you or Binghamton or Staten Island or anybody. Albuquerque, Sacramento. Not the Aths. What happens here? How does it work? Well, they're giving Senga a time frame. We'd like to send you out by this time, and if you don't, they got to decide what to do. But just let me know, Senga, if you don't mind. And they're talking to the agent and the player. What do I think will happen here? Well, Carlos Mendoza, the embattled manager of the Mets, would not specify whether Senga had actually been asked to take a minor league optional assignment. But when you leak out, when you want a player to take an assignment, you leak it out. You want the world and the media to know that, hey, this is what we want to do because we're not going to put up with this level of mediocrity. What do I think happens? Senga says, I'd prefer not to take the assignment. You want to put me in the bullpen? Have at it. Happy to give up my turn in the rotation. But going to the minor leagues, it is no picnic when you've been a big leaguer. Believe me, as much as the union may have helped the minor leaguers, life as a minor leaguer is not exactly life as a big leaguer. We will find out what happens, but it's going to happen very soon. I would point out that for any of you who are thinking to yourself that the fact that Senga is Japanese may actually have a role in whether they would accept a minor league assignment, I would tell you that I agree and understand why that would be in your head, because it is true that Japanese players, they have a respect for the game that is inspiring, and they have a belief in their ability that is enthralling. But with Senga, I don't know him. I don't know what will happen with the Mets. I can only predict a minor league assignment for Senga. I don't think so. If I'm wrong, I'll own it. Nothing personal pick of the day. Worse when your pick of the day gives up runs in the first inning. Aaron Nola, second straight start. Dude, Christian Yelich was not playing with some back soreness, and the Phillies still couldn't beat the Brewers. The Phillies could have run away with this division. In fact, they're already running away with it, but they could really have run away with this division. But no. The Brewers continue to be the Brewers, and why would I pick against the Brewers? I got to be out of my mind. So we're 116 and 113. We have 2 picks today. It's football season. I'm going to have a chance to talk about this, I believe. Now, we got to wait and see because it's EARLY. But next hour, for nothing personal, we could have a guest, should have a guest, who will be able to talk about the NFL. We'll have a guest that will be able to talk about the NFL. But opening night, baby. We have an NFL regular season game, and wouldn't you know it, we got Jerry Jones. We've got Saquon Barkley. We've not got Micah Parsons. We've got the Cowboys getting 8.5 from the world champion Philadelphia Eagles. What do you think? You got to take the Eagles and give the points. Nope, we're taking the Cowboys. Why? Jerry Jones, the owner, went to Jerry Jones, the GM, and said, go right down there to Brian Schottenheimer, the new coach, and say, this is your Super Bowl, baby. We can't come out of here looking terrible. We just traded away our best player. I want to take a victory lap for that trade. Kenny Clark, stop Saquon Barkley. Future first-round picks, stay available. I like Cowboys plus 8.5, even though the Cowboys stink and they're going to win like 6 games. I think the Eagles win this game, but maybe it's tight. Cowboys plus 8.5. The second pick, because we're going to give you a baseball game, because when we get Paul Skeens as an underdog, you can bet your sweet Bippy we're taking it. Paul Skeens is plus 104. Don't panic. It is over the Dodgers. But the Dodgers aren't the Dodgers that you think they are. They lose plenty of games. They're not even going to win 100 games. When we thought, when the season started, they'd win 180 games. Much like we thought the Rockies would lose 180 games. And it turns out the White Sox are going to be stuck with that record. Phew! Jerry's so angry with the Rockies. OMG. But Skeens and the Pirates are plus 104 over Snell and the Dodgers. We're taking the Pirates. Those are the 2 picks of the day. Before we leave here for this first hour, what we do on Nothing Personal, we're live. We have no script. We have no prompters. It's just me talking and Coca talking in my ear. That's the show. I make mistakes. When I make a mistake, make sure you tell me because I'll make a correction because I've got accountability. Well, I got corrected yesterday. I thought the Brewers-Phillies were playing a 2-game series. I had not been aware and had forgotten that they had actually played Monday but had a day off on Tuesday, and it was a 3-game series. So the reality was that I did a whole segment on these 2-game series, and I had the entire thought wrong. Now, it's right what I say about 2-game series and what a pain in the neck it is for clubbies. Go listen to the show yesterday, what a pain in the neck it is for players. But what I had wrong is the Phillies-Brewers were not playing a 2-game series. Sorry about that, but I 100% appreciate the correction. Please, keep them coming. I don't mind. What I also would love is for you to hang around because when we come back, we have a whole nother hour of Nothing Personal. Welcome back to hour two of Nothing Personal. Today is Thursday, September 4th, 2025. We are 1 minute closer to the start of the NFL season. And you know what Thursday means? We have a guest for you, and we're lucky. Someone I used to work with at CBS now is a Fox NFL and college analyst. The perfect person to talk about everything that's happening, Brady Quinn. How are you, Brady?
I'm doing great, David. Thanks for having me, man. Obviously, good time to kind of talk some football with you, but long time no see, so I'm glad we get to connect.
No, this is terrific. It was always fun doing shows with you. And I've been thinking about you and watching you on the air and thinking about some of the craziness that is surrounding that started with the Big Noon Kickoff and you. And just I was picturing you as all the shrapnel was flying by your head, trying to say, hey, man, we have a season to talk about, not who's allowed where, inside what university. What's your reaction as you're heading into, week one and you're starting a show and all of a sudden there's distractions everywhere?
Well, I think when you do TV long enough, you realize there's always distractions, there's technical issues, there's things that change last minute. I mean, I remember we were in East Lansing for Michigan State one year, and Calvin Johnson was going to come on the show. He got stuck up in traffic. And so for about 30 minutes of the show, we were constantly like on standby for Calvin Johnson joining the show. And he finally got there eventually, but you kind of had to manage it on live television. Like at any point in time, you're trying to segue off of whatever you're talking about just to bring in a guy who at that point wasn't in the Hall of Fame, but you knew was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And so that's TV. Like you get used to those sorts of things. It seems like in today's society, and I think you'd agree with this, what tends to draw the most reaction and the most attention tends to get the most views. And that's what things are about. So it's never surprising to me when, we're a part of some stuff that has some drama that surrounds it.
The story of it should have been Arch Manning. And, the odds moved for him after that performance, after their loss to Ohio State, who's now the new number one in the most recent AP poll, is that he went from like plus 650 to plus 1600 at the time for Heisman. When you're watching that game and you're watching his performance, are you reevaluating your evaluation of Arch Manning based on that game?
I'm not, because it's funny, like all the hype, it wasn't like he had never started before and it came out of nowhere. I mean, granted, it was versus Louisiana Monroe or Mississippi State, but even the times he came in, whether it was during the playoff or other points in time in the season, he played well and he showcased the arm strength, he showcased the athleticism, all the things that you'd be looking for. I just give a lot of credit to Ohio State. And I said this at one point, after the game, is think about how hard it is to prepare for 8 new starters on that side of the ball and a defensive coordinator that, you're watching his NFL tape. You don't know what types of coverages, blitzes, fronts, adjustments they're going to make throughout the course of the game. The Ohio State offensive staff can just go back and look at exactly what happened in the semifinal game last season, because that's roughly the same characters that you've got on that side of the ball for Texas and the same defensive coordinator, Pete Kwiatkowski. So it's a much easier game plan for the Ohio State side than it was, I think, for Texas, at least for their offense in that regard. So I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to provide some details into what goes into all of this. And one of the reasons why I think Ohio State was so successful, I mean, it's in part that, but also they have a damn good defense. I mean, that group, when I went back and watched the film, there weren't many open throws. Now, there were a few that Arch Manning flat out missed, and that's on him. He's got to be better than that. He knows that. But there was a lot of times where every single thing was contested, and he had to throw a perfect throw. And on the touchdown, it was a pretty darn good throw. On the one up the sideline to the tight end, towards the end of the game was a really good throw. You saw instances of it, but I thought Ohio State made him feel uncomfortable. They didn't try to allow him to flush outside the pocket. A lot of young quarterbacks like to do that because A, they can see, and if they see, they feel much more confident where they're throwing the football. But B, he's athletic and he can hurt you with his legs. And when you take away his ability to see and you take away his ability to run, it makes most quarterbacks feel like I'm trapped. I'm in a house that's burning down and I can't get out. That's how he looked on the field to me. He never had a rhythm. He didn't look confident. It didn't look like he could see, and everything was moving really fast for him because he was trying to catch up because of the skies of the Ohio State defense.
So that's a very big point in that for professional athletes, we talk to them often about slow the game down. And some players can do it and some players can't. And when you cannot slow the game down, you're going to be not successful. I was reading, Brady, yesterday that backup quarterbacks are potentially making like $500,000 in NIL money. And how much money? I know you're smiling, because can you imagine? Can you imagine your worth right now? You're like looking back and saying, are you kidding me? Like, I would have made more than Arch, but I'm thinking about all this NIL money. And we used to sort of think about college football. Hey, you've got Alabama, and they're always going to be there. And then Nick Saban sort of disappears, saying, I don't know if I like how it is. I don't know if there can be the separation that I'm used to. When you look at the landscape, do you agree that it's actually hard now to think about who can separate themselves from a college program standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's elements that allow it to be somewhat of a level playing field. I don't like the fact that they've allowed collectives to remain. I really thought they were going to try to find a way of eliminating it so there would be a quasi salary cap. But it doesn't feel like that's going to be the case. You know, they're going to have the House NCAA settlement revenue to share with the student athletes. There's no mandate on every school and how they're going to go about spending it, so that could create some inequities. But also the fact that collectives will still be able to exist. And yes, they have the College Sports Commission, the CSC, but I don't really know what power they have to negate any of these deals or deem them, not, market value and falling under the guidelines they're providing, because there's no collective bargaining agreement. There's no union from the player side. So any gripe that a student athlete has or a player has with the College Sports Commission shutting down one of those deals from a collective, they're going to take to the courts, and they're probably going to win.
I love the idea of the College Sports Commission looking at a local car dealership and saying, well, wait a minute, that should only be 200 grand,
right,
not 275 grand. It's almost laughable.
It really is, and it's kind of precedent setting in a way, but it's also fascinating to see how this is going to play out from a legal perspective. But because of the House, NCAA settlement, there's this idea that there should be somewhat of a level playing field, but there's not because of the collectives. And so I think the hard thing is there's programs obviously who aren't going to have as much funds to be able to put into that, and they're going to fall by the wayside. But there's also those teams that aren't going to spend wisely. I mean, Texas A&M was the case study for that. They've been a program that, when NIL first came about, they spent more than anyone, and it wasn't spent in the right places. And the culture of that team and that program kind of fell to the wayside. And so now you've got Mike Elko there, who's back trying to build it back up and do it the right way. But I think when you look at what's happened at Alabama, the culture to me is fragile. And honestly, it's more player-led than I think it is coach-led. But I think what happens is when you have a coach like Nick Saban who leaves, if you don't have strong enough leaders, upperclassmen, veteran players in that locker room, a lot of the small things start to be overlooked, especially if the guy who's the head coach doesn't hold those players accountable. And then those players don't hold each other accountable. So when I go back and I look at the tape of Alabama, I see a lack of effort. I see a lack of technique and a lack of them doing their job and holding their leverage, for example, on defense, if they're in pass coverage or filling the right gap the way they're supposed to. There's all these little breakdowns. Those little things, add up. And that was something that Nick Saban would never allow in his program, or at least he would chew guys out and they wouldn't be playing if they were going on. And it feels like under Kalen DeBoer that someone's taken their thumb off of those players, and the program feels just more lax at this moment.
Would you have thought that if they had won? It's just funny how you and I, how we all look at things. And sometimes we look at the results and sometimes we look at the process. But I've always had this feeling that when a team like Alabama goes in and all of a sudden, like, the world is crumbling. Should we fire the coach? What, is he going to last? Like, it's literally a tragedy when the loss happens. You look at that team. Do you see this as basically how this season will play out for them? Or do you think, because of the way you said it, hey, no, this is who they are, and it really wasn't that big an upset to begin with?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt the odds makers had that wrong. I mean, clearly Florida State's a much better football team with Tommy Castellanos as the quarterback, and you saw how effective he is running the football. Gus Malzahn's a genius. He's an offensive genius. So, he's going to put defenses and their coordinators and blenders as far as the things he's going to do offensively. That was always going to be a challenge for them. I think my concern was the lack of effort. I mean, that's your opening game of the season. There shouldn't be any need to be able to get that team up or to get that team excited, whether it's the leaders or the back end guys on the roster. And so to not have that sort of effort, not have the sort of conditioning you need, it's definitely concerning. And I think, look, this is the opportunity for Alabama. You make your biggest strides from week 1 to week 2, because in college football, there's no preseason. It's really hard to gauge where you're at until you go out there and play. And for those teams that chose to play a tough team, a tough opponent like Alabama did versus Florida State, you've got to be able to make those corrections, make those adjustments, and then be able to put the right guys in there in the right spots to succeed. So I think they've got a great opportunity to respond and listen to everything that's being said about them in the media, and be the team that I thought they were going to be coming into the season, where they would be able to win games defensively, running the football. Ty Simpson would be able to kind of come along doing his part. He's a talented passer, but he's unproven. I really thought they would show more dominance in the trenches. It just was not there. So this is their opportunity to respond, and we'll see how they handle it. Because if not, I know it's a big buyout for Kalen DeBoer, but you have to be concerned, considering the track record of success that this the Alabama fan base is accustomed to, and if they're not going to be calling for his head.
You think that one more loss and they would fire him?
I don't think after one more loss, but I'm saying if you lose one more, I mean, you were a 9-3 football team last year and you didn't make it in. You start off 0-2, like where does that leave you? So, but I think if they don't make the playoff again, 2 years in a row not making it after the run of success that you had under Nick Saban, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of fans calling for that, clamoring for that, not wanting to go back to the Alabama football era before Nick Saban got there.
What a tough customer you are and the fans are. And I guess that tonight we see the road to Santa Clara starts. Always a big day on the calendar as the NFL season kicks off. And of course, it makes perfect sense that it's the Cowboys and the Eagles, because the Cowboys, as usual, dominate the offseason headlines with Micah Parsons not obviously suiting up for the Cowboys. But isn't more pressure on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles as they try to repeat? Or do you think that the Cowboys, who are not really, their over-under is quite low, like 7.5, not to make the playoffs, where do you see tonight's game?
I see the pressure more on Dallas and Jerry Jones. I think he's put himself in this position. He's traded away your best player on your team to get Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks and still be able to act like you're able to be in the hunt when you have a Washington team in your own division that, took big strides, and you have a Giants team that I think it's going to be improved in your division. So I know they feel like they're better against the run. We're going to find out. I mean, when I was a Philly runs for over 200 yards on you week 1, after all your comments, how the trade's going to help you be better at stopping the run, and your defense isn't improved, and the head coach, isn't managing the game well. And he's the guy that you opted to go with as opposed to extending Mike McCarthy, who's won a Super Bowl and has coached a lot of good teams in this league. I mean, every single thing that they've done this offseason, or haven't done for that matter, is going to be on display, I think, for Dallas. And obviously Jerry Jones doesn't mind that. He likes being in the spotlight. Hell, he's playing himself in Landman. There's all these things going on, but I don't think it makes them a good football team. So I think where we should be talking about Philly more is Philly the team. We were talking about it with Kansas City because they had won back-to-back Super Bowls, but is Philly that team that maybe we should talk about more in regards to being able to win back-to-back and maybe be able to three-peat? I mean, their roster is as good as anyone in the NFL. They've got arguably the best offensive line. They have a quarterback who seems to constantly show up and show out on the biggest stage. They have the best player in the NFL, according to the NFL Top 100, and their players in Saquon Barkley. The receivers are studs. The defense reloaded. I mean, I look at this team and I sit there and say, what do they don't have? I mean, all they need to do is remain healthy and then continue to build off of what they were able to do last year. So, but I don't think there's more pressure on them necessarily to do so. I think if anything, it's more about, figuring out what the identity of this year's team's going to be, even though there's so many guys coming back, and how they can get back to the top of the mountain again.
Do you need your identity when you're trying to win a second Super Bowl in a row? Don't you want the same identity? Don't you want to just keep rolling as though it's one long 34-game season?
Well, I think you're the type of man, Dave, that zigs when other people zag. And so I think you would agree. You always have to be growing, evolving, and adapting. And whatever you were last year in the NFL, you can't be this year. And so if that was your identity last year, teams are studying for you because they, especially your divisional opponents, because they had to play you a couple of times. So they're going to have wrinkles for you. They're going to have adjustments for whatever was effective last year. So you always have to be growing and changing. And so I don't think you can keep your identity the same. I think there's elements of it. And I think ultimately where you want to get to, winning a Super Bowl, repeating, and how you're going to do it with some of those foundational things like, accountability and working hard and the way you go about trying to get the ball to your playmakers and having luck. Like, let's be real. The best teams that win championships, there's always a little bit of luck along the way. The injury bug tends to not bite them quite as bad, or if it does, they happen to have a backup that can come in and play. I mean, I look at, for example, Howie Roseman. They have Tanner McKee, who played phenomenal in the preseason. He looks like he can step in and do it, but in case he can't, they got Sam Howell, a guy who's got starting experience, and he could come in and do the job. So even just the way they go about in Philly, building their roster to absorb the potential for an injury. And no one knows it better than them because they've won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback in Nick Foles. But just the importance of having that sort of depth on a roster to make a run. So I kind of look at it and just say, there's elements of this team that are going to be the same, but their identity can't be the same because every year it's different. You have to adapt and grow and go from there.
So if you are the Eagles, wouldn't it be interesting if Saquon is actually not their number one option tonight? Because in theory, the trade was to help stop the run. You bring in Clark and you have Jerry Jones, the GM. I can't remember if the GM said it or the owner. One of the Jerry Joneses said it, that, hey, we believe that our real problem was stopping the run. I think they said it 50 times during the press conference. So maybe what they do is have Saquon as the option or have him out as almost as a receiver. Is that something that you think that they can out-coach the Cowboys because of the new staff, and that gives the Eagles an even bigger advantage tonight?
Well, I think Kevin Patullo, who will be calling the plays now, will have some wrinkles. I mean, they're preparing for a guy that they really don't know his identity as a play caller. And there are elements there for Jalen Hurts. Like, he's got to kind of feel that out. You can do it in preseason or you can do it in training camp, but until you get into real live games where, you go into it and there's adjustments that are made, then the next series you're adjusting again, you don't know how that play caller is going to handle it. Some guys are really, really good at preparing you. Like, the game plan on paper looks great. Then you get in the game and they don't know how to pull the trigger. Like, they don't know how to actually call the shot when you need to call the shot, anticipate what's going to happen next, have kind of a feel for, the flow of the game, how it's going, whether you need to, speed it up or slow it down. There's an art to that. I've been with guys who are great play callers, and I've been with guys who are great game planners, but they can't call it once they get into it. And I think some of my best games.
Who is your best?
Charlie Weiss had an unbelievable knack for doing that. He was obviously my coordinator in college, but you go back to just his NFL days, winning 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots. He was one that stood out to me. I had a guy named Rob Chudzinski who was with us in Cleveland. Chud could find these different looks on film, game planning. And I was like, man, this is nuts. This is like 2 years ago, using this personnel grouping in this situation, in this formation, or how they shifted motion to get to it. And sure as hell, man, you get into the game and they would be the exact same look. And it was just nuts how coordinators carry their same adjustments within their defense from team to team. And sometimes it'd be like a different team the coordinator was with, and it would still play out that way. So Rob Chudzinski was another one that, man, when he got hot, he could dial it up. Mike McCoy, Adam Gase, those guys, they could really adapt to when I was in Denver, whether it was Kyle Orton or Tim Tebow, and putting in an offense that was dramatically different and being able to change and pivot in season to be able to make it kind of work for both guys to the best of their ability. So I've been fortunate enough to be around some guys who definitely can call some plays. Josh McDaniels as a head coach, it didn't work out in Denver when I was with him, but I can tell you this much. As a quarterback, you loved him. He gave you so much power at the line of scrimmage. You knew if you were going to have 10 pass attempts, you're going to throw for at least 100 yards because he was able to space the field in a way where you could get guys catch and run, balls and easy matchups, whether it's zone coverage or man-to-man coverage, to go find those weaknesses within the defense. So that's just a few of them. But, obviously Josh still calling plays. Charlie Weiss Jr. now is a baller calling plays.
Oh, God. Do you feel old? How old do you feel that you just said that?
Well, what made me feel the oldest this year was, we taped some of our segments for our Big Noon Kickoff show during the Big Ten Media Days. And the quarterback, Devin Williams Jr., out in Washington, walks in and he goes, "Hey, man, you played against my dad." And I would go, "Oh." I just started to cringe right away because I was like, "Oh, all right, where?" He goes, "He was a cornerback at Michigan State." He goes, "You threw a touchdown pass against the corner of the end zone." I go, "To Raymond McKnight, number 5. He goes, "Yeah, that was him." And so I kind of like dapped him up and we did the rest of the interview, but he left and I was thinking to myself, like, damn, like I've officially graduated into the, like, I am old. Like, I'm a dad of five, so I feel that way, but that made me feel about as old as I can feel at this point.
It's always a tough one when the Suns start playing. I've had it obviously happen. I want to switch to the AFC a little bit, and it's the schedule makers, bless their heart. I know obviously how hard it is to put a schedule together, but the NFL has quite a week one, and I believe it's the Sunday night game when we're going to have the Ravens and the Bills play. So one of Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen is going to be 0-1, and it won't be panic because they're the two best players I think in the league with Saquon, let's say. But tell me, who's got more pressure to finally make a Super Bowl? Is it Allen or is it Jackson?
Oh, I think it's Lamar Jackson, and I think it's close. But the reason I'm going to lean more on Lamar is because I think he relies more on his legs still than he does his arm. Even though they both run a decent amount, I still think that's a bigger part of Lamar Jackson's game. And I think over time, that's going to slow down. You still continue to worry about the injury concerns as he gets older too. Well, that's the same for Josh Allen, but he doesn't
Right.
do
He
it
uses
quite as
his
much.
body. Josh Allen, right? He uses his big body in a way that maybe now that he's married and getting older, he's like, wait a minute, this hurts way too much.
Well, I would just say this. I think Josh Allen's game starts in the pocket and he utilizes his legs when it's there. For Lamar Jackson, I think he's like a true dual threat. Like he can no doubt throw from the pocket and win an MVP doing that, but he also is dynamic with his legs. And so because he's so special at both, not that he relies on it, but there's definitely times where I feel like he resorts to that maybe more so than Josh does. And I'll put it this way, like I feel like eventually as both get older, both are going to move away from that and they're going to use that sparingly. But I think it's still a little bit bigger piece of Lamar's game than it is in Josh Allen's at this point. So I think for that reason, as that window starts to close on those guys as they get older and they can't run quite or move quite as well, that becomes more detrimental to them. So I look at I look at that division too. It's always going to be a tough division. I think when you've got the window at the roster built out around you in the AFC North, you have to seize that opportunity. Like I look at Cincinnati right now, they're going to have Trey Hendrickson for 1 year, and they're going to have Higgins and Chase together, and they're going to make another run at it this year. But I would imagine Hendrickson will not be there after this year based on the deal they signed. I don't know if Shamar Stewart will be able to fill that void. Who knows how long Higgins will be there. And then it becomes a question of like, will Cincinnati be able to continue to keep putting pieces around Joe Burrow? Or is that window going to eventually close? So, you have all those questions for different teams in the division, but I just think it's such a competitive division year in and year out. The Steelers are like always a constant. That I feel like that window is so tight in the AFC North to be able to seize that opportunity where you got the Jets in the AFC East. They seem to struggle with things. I'm not sure what to expect out of the Dolphins this year. I do think the Pats are building to something. I think they'll end up being second in the AFC East this year. But I just think that the division, the AFC East, I mean, we saw New England dominate it forever. I think Buffalo's going to be able to have their time to make a run in the AFC East for a while.
So we've covered the AFC, we've covered the NFC. Now let's cover the Super Bowl. It's the road starts tonight. Make no mistake, and it ends in Santa Clara. We got in our remaining time, and it's not a lot of it. Who do you see playing in the Super Bowl? I'm putting
Obviously,
you
I
on
was
the
there for a
spot.
year. I love the Chiefs. You didn't put Patrick Mahomes with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, Saquon as far as the best players. I still think Patrick
You're
Mahomes
right.
is just a stud. I really do. So I'm going to say Kansas City. That combination they have between Mahomes and Reed, and even Kelsey, who's not what he once was, but yeah, I think with some of the pieces they have there, it's hard to pick against them. And so I'll go with Kansas City. I think on the NFC side, the roster's so good. I want to pick Philly. Um, Green Bay, though, I'll say Kansas City versus Green Bay. They're going to have Parsons now. That's a roster that I think also is built to create havoc on defense. They've got playmakers that are young and have emerged. I think Jordan Love, too, is continually built into his own. And so I'll say Kansas City, Green Bay. And I feel bad about this because I usually do. I will pick every single game of the season, and then I'll kind of pair it all together and all that. So now for my radio show, I'm going to have to make sure I pick Kansas City, Green Bay, even though I haven't gone through the schedule for every team yet.
The ultimate irony of Jerry Jones handing an NFC championship to Green Bay would be an absolute chef's kiss of brilliance in
Right.
terms of the Cowboys. But Brady, we could keep going. I wish we could. Good luck this season. Make sure you watch Brady Quinn on wait, are you working every day now? The Big Noon Kickoff. That's at 10
Yeah.
a.m. You're an NFL analyst, all on Fox. Brady Quinn, you have a radio show. You're everywhere. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, David. Always good talking with you.
That was so good to see, Brady. Appreciate you being here, Brady. I didn't get a chance to give you. Now you're going to have to keep listening, although I think you just hung up. But I think it's time for my Super Bowl picks because with the season starting, you can't wait till after the Eagles are 1-0 or the Cowboys are 1-0 and say, hey, Jerry Jones is going to finally get back there for the first time since the 90s. All right, I'll give you my pick. Spoiler alert, it's not the Cowboys. Going back to Jim Kelly. I want to take 1 second here, Coca. When you make it to 4 Super Bowls in a row, and I took such great pleasure as a Giants fan watching the Bills lose 4 Super Bowls in a row, the Giants win in Super Bowl 25, one of the sports highlights of my life. But there's something about the Buffalo Bills, something about Josh Allen, something about marrying an actress when you start a season saying to yourself, listen, MVP, newly married, great team, no title, no Super Bowl appearance. It's finally going to happen. The Buffalo Bills are going to the Super Bowl. Now, that game, when it comes in February in San Francisco, Santa Clara, who is going to be the NFC representative? Could we have back-to-back champions? Have the Eagles been passed by? Is Brady right that the Green Bay Packers, my love, Wisconsin, are they going to get there? And Jordan Love will make people forget about Aaron Rodgers, who they've already forgotten about. Nope. Jalen Hurts, believe it or not. This is for you, Eagles fans. They're going to make it back. They're going to have a chance. It's going to be the story. Eagles trying to take over from the Chiefs, the new dynasty, 2 Super Bowl wins in a row. And then the game will start. Josh Allen will win the toss. They will take the ball, not defer, and they will score. First possession of the Super Bowl, Josh Allen on a 6-yard run. I've seen the script, so I don't want to take too much credit. Buffalo Bills over the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. Get ready. Do you watch RedZone, Coca? Are you one of those guys who sits around every Sunday watching NFL RedZone? Just watching all. NFL RedZone, for those of you who don't know, is a channel you can get. It's an upcharge, shocking. And you get all of like the scoring plays as they're happening. 7 hours straight of teams that are in the red zone. The red zone is within the 20-yard line of your opponent where you're about to score. Hey, what's your record in the red zone? Well, we've got 1 touchdown, 3 field goals, 1 turnover, and then whatever, a punt. No one punts from the red zone. Whatever. There's all these red zone stats. And there's a channel that if you don't want to watch one game, you can watch every game, only the good parts. And the cool part of it is you got to watch it without commercials if that's what makes you happy. Yesterday, the internet was ablaze with Kawhi Leonard. But a little story out there came, and in another day, that would have been the biggest story of the day. Now it was only the 6th biggest story of the day. The NFL Red Zone will now have commercials. Let me explain what that means. So the Red Zone was this thing that you paid money for, and in theory, what you got back was a commercial-free experience, except that was never the value proposition. The value proposition was that by adding the NFL Red Zone and paying the extra money, you get an opportunity in addition or aside from Sunday Ticket where you can watch the entirety of all NFL games. You get one place, one-stop shopping for what matters for your fantasy team, what matters for your gambling, what matters for your interest, because who doesn't like scores? The value proposition was never that you're getting 7 straight hours without a commercial. We're used to commercials. Now, it is true that if you pay money on a tier on certain streaming services, you can get ad-free, but you pay extra for that. But it turns out that people are just fine with advertisements. It turns out that when they pay money, they expect advertisements because they understand that in addition to paying money, which you do, whether you're are a cable subscriber, or you've a never quarter or an always sometimes cutter, at the end of the day, the way we get our content, there's commercials. Like on this show right now, I'm being interrupted by a commercial. This show is brought to you by Aleph, Bet, and Gimel. You know what I'm saying. But the strangest part about the announcement yesterday is that ESPN was taking shrapnel, as though ESPN, the greedy corporate oinkers, had somehow made our viewing experience worse because ESPN was the new owner of the NFL RedZone. Therefore, this is the showing of how the changes are going to happen when big bad ESPN buys the NFL media assets, and they immediately put in commercials. And I said to myself when I read it, I said, that doesn't sound right. The deal's not even done. It hasn't even gotten federal approval. Forget shareholder approval. Forget the actual exchange of assets. The NFL does not own 10% of ESPN. Stop that. That is a proposed deal that hasn't happened. ESPN does not own the media assets of the NFL. Stop that. That deal hasn't happened. The NFL decided they wanted commercials in the red zone, and God bless them. Of course they did. But the pushback was so weird that ESPN getting blamed. If I'm ESPN, I'm calling up my potential new partners and saying, hey, Raj, do me a favor. Could you get it out there that we had nothing to do with this? We got enough problems trying to compete with all the other places where people are getting their sports and streamers and Apple and everything else. So can you just make it stop? So the NFL had to give an update. The NFL said the plan will be to space a limited number of ads throughout the 7+ hours of the show. Double box ads. You know what that means? That you're still seeing the red zone, but you're seeing ads on the right, like 2 boxes, like the State Farm commercials. Not a sponsor of Nothing Personal, I don't believe, so I can't say that. But I could say that, but I'm not telling. Whatever, you know what I'm saying. So double box ads, we're used to that. We've seen it. What's the big deal? And the viewers, the NFL pointed out, will hear the audio of the ads, but the other box will still show NFL Red Zone. What's your complaint with that? Why is it we live in a world where everyone has to complain about something at all times? Like, oh man, the man is after me. This is terrible for the consumers. It's terrible for the viewers. This is just another example of me being taken advantage of. Give me a break. They had to say this move has been contemplated and tested for over a year now and is completely unrelated to the recent news regarding ESPN and the NFL. Phew, just in case the internet sleuths were completely moronic and not just partially moronic. Roger Goodell's busy. He's busy. It's opening day. He's got to be. It's not called that. That's baseball. What is actually today called, Coca? Is it just called the start of the NFL season? Is there like an expression that we use? Opening night in the NFL. Game 1. Week 1. I'm not sure what we say. Baseball's easy. Opening day. It's opening day. There's always an afternoon game. Sometimes we had to put the stencil on the field that said opening night. And then baseball said, wait a minute, that stencil doesn't make sense. It fades and it looks bad. And how about if we just call it opening week? So now the stencils in baseball say opening week. Oh, it's called kickoff. That's a good one, Coca. Get it? Kickoff. Kickoff starts a game. Kickoff starts a season. I like that. Thank you, Coca. So Roger Goodell is busy. He's got to make the media rounds. We know that Roger Goodell speaks after every owners meeting, 4 quarterly owners meetings. We know that Roger Goodell speaks at the Super Bowl. We know that Roger Goodell speaks before the season starts. Well, he had some interesting things to say. He went on NBC's The Today Show. And I want to just point out, so you have information on 2 concepts, so you're not surprised by any of it. 1, an 18-game schedule. How many times does Roger Goodell have to intimate when he does media or when leaks come out through various unknown and known sources that the NFL would like to play 18 regular season games and cut its number of preseason games? How many more times does Roger Goodell have to let you know exactly what's coming? Now, Roger Goodell did this in a very smart way on the Today Show because he said, what do the fans want? This is my favorite. You know, when an owner wins a championship and the first thing, we want to thank the fans. And I always tell you, yeah, we're supposed to say that. But in fact, we want to win because we want to win and we want to be World Series champions. Now, it's fun that the fans get to have the memory. I'm happy to make memories for fans, but it's the smart thing to do. And if you can thank the fans first, that's always good. It makes everyone feel better. You get all sorts of applause and claps, and it just feels good to be loved by a group of strangers who you've now made a lifetime memory. So Roger Goodell says, we always say, what do the fans want? Yeah, I'm sure that's what the NFL always says. Roger Goodell sits in a meeting and says, what do the fans want? Never. Not one time. When Roger Goodell is doing media deals with 17 different platforms, there's a game on every platform every different night. You have no idea what's what and who's who, and you need a scorecard just to figure out what channel to go to. Believe me, that's exactly what the fans want. But don't worry. We always say, what do the fans want? And then he actually said, this is true. What do the fans really think is important? And I think it's clear they want more regular season games versus preseason games. I'm sorry, Coca. I can't do it with a straight face. Wouldn't it have been nicer for Roger Goodell just to say, so folks, let me be clear to you. I've alerted the union. I've alerted the owners. We're going to 18 games. Because it doesn't matter if the players don't want to play 18. It doesn't matter if their bodies can't handle 18. But I'll tell you right now, you know who can handle 18? The broadcasters, the networks. We want more inventory, and we're going to sell that inventory because $12 billion is not enough for the Cowboys. $5 billion. Our lowest valued team is $5 billion. That's an outrage. We got to keep that number going up. If I want to keep earning a couple $100 million a year as I get older, I've got grandkids to feed. But don't worry. The 18 games is because you want it. Why can't you just come out and say, no, we want it? I think that would have been cool. But he wanted to make sure that any objections that came out, that he had an answer. So what do you do when you know there's going to be objections to an argument you have or a point of view you have? You try to deal with the objections directly. You don't react to objections. You proactively address what you believe the objections will be. So Roger Goodell, we continue to make our game safer. And I think that's at the core of making that kind of decision. I'm sorry. I obviously misheard him on the Today Show, but I think what he was saying is there was some sort of correlation. He's claiming direct, I'm saying inverse, but let's not quibble over a difference in a few letters. But what he's saying is that the reason that he can even consider going to 18 games is because that game is safe. We've got great helmets, great pads, and believe me, great cups. We continue to make our game safer. Yep, that's the core of why we made this decision. And he said, I'm thinking about the players. He literally said, can we do it safely for our players? Okay. I think that that's very important, that when you're making the decision to go to 18 games, that you try to convince people on your media availabilities that it's all about the fans and the safety of the players. Give me a break. Total horse hockey. If you want a horse hockey shirt, we have them. DavidSamsonPodcast.com. Go to it. It's funny. The second thing that Roger Goodell has made sure that you know about, because this is not new. We've covered it on Nothing Personal. Why he keeps saying it? Because it's going to happen. He talked about international games. He talked about his desire to expand the number of international games. And guess what? It's coming. I told you there's going to be more than 7 international games next year. That's the number there are this year. Whether people are aware or not, there's a game in Brazil tomorrow. I can't believe I just said that without practicing it, rehearsing it, or checking it. Is it not true, Coca, that the Chiefs play in Brazil tomorrow night, Friday night? Please tell me I got that right, because then you can edit out all of this thought that I got it wrong, because I just want the audience to know that I am absolutely sure of what I say. Chiefs Chargers in Brazil Friday night. Get ready for that. We may have a pick on tomorrow's show, because we do this show every day live at 7 a.m. on the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. So Roger Goodell says, all right, 7's good. We're allowed 10 under the current CBA, but no, we want more. He actually said it. Makes me happy. We hope to get to 16 regular season games that we can play over the season. He's talking about 16 international games. That's not allowed under the CBA. That's going to require a reopener. That's going to require some sort of give. So Roger Goodell said, I know how to address that. We can go to 16 international games if we have an 18-game regular season. He's marrying the two concepts now. So he goes to the players and he says, I know you don't love international games. I know it's really hard on the body. Believe me, I've been to Japan for a weekend. It hurts, Roger said. Believe me, I get it. But it's only Europe. It's only South America. Don't kid yourself. Flying to Brazil, just as hard as flying to Japan. But I digress. Goodell is trying to say, we get 18 games. We go international every single weekend, which is what I told you was going to happen. And players, this is so good for you because revenue for the league is going to skyrocket. It's going to be an afternoon delight that will manifest itself not in any other pleasure other than a higher salary cap. And the players will say, now you're talking my language. The problem is there's a new executive director of the NFLPA. Remember the guy, David White, the guy from SAG-AFTRA, the guy who took over when C. Thomas Howell was kicked out and J.C. Tretter was kicked out. Now, of course, they would say they both resigned under abnormal circumstances, but whatever. There's a new executive director. When there's a new executive director and you're the commissioner of the league, you know when you talk, the executive director is going to have to respond. So David White had a little comment. He said, haven't had any conversations with the NFL about expanding the regular season. And let's be clear, David White said, an 18th regular season game, quote, certainly is not inevitable. Is not inevitable. Is not inevitable. That means it's not a guarantee. That means that if Roger Goodell thinks that he's going to get 18 reg plus 16 int, that he's going to have to do something for me so I, David White, can prove to the players that the interim tag should be removed from my title because I have gained rights and money for you that otherwise you would not have gotten. It's a brilliant strategy by David White. And it's one of the reasons why commissioners would prefer that executive directors stay in place, especially when they have the advantage over the executive directors, the way Goodell felt with Howell, the way Manfred feels with Clark. Very common. But when a switch comes, it can create this sort of tension that we now see is existing. Unnecessary distraction from the season opening kickoff or just kickoff. So David White talked about meeting Roger Goodell. They had a productive meeting when they met a couple weeks ago. White described it as, quote, a very good start to our relationship. I always love that when two sides meet, like two heads of countries, and they meet and they're trying to figure out how to save millions of lives. Forget how to put football games on TV and how to make sure players don't get concussions. Sometimes when heads of state meet, we're talking about actual life and death. But I digress. And what comes out of the meeting between two heads of state is, boy, that was respectful. That was a great start. I'm far more interested when bombs are being dropped, when people are being murdered and slashed in the street. I would rather, when there's tons of hate crimes and all sorts of horrible mass shootings, I'd like it when heads of state get together and actually do stuff as opposed to shaking hands and saying, oh, this was good. I feel like we're on the road to doing stuff. Now, when it comes to the NFL executive director, NFLPA, and the commissioner, if they want to say after a meeting, hey, that was respectful and a really good start, I'm not going to lose my mind, but I'm going to tell you that what David White is doing is purposeful. David White is trying to let Roger Goodell know, hey, man, there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Billy Ray Valentine. Mike Hill, are you watching? You're busy again today. How many times are you going to find Aaron Boone? Aaron Boone, my guy. You know I love Aaron Boone. Loved having him as a player. Manager of the Yankees, trying to get the Yankees to the place they haven't been since 2009. Dancing for his dinner, and he eats well. Well, Aaron Boone got ejected again last night when they lost to the Astros. He didn't get ejected because of the loss. Why does Aaron Boone ever get ejected? Same reason, different day. Balls and strikes. He is very unhappy with umpires. Now, Aaron Boone knows this because I've spoken to Aaron Boone about it. Hard to see the umpires making the right calls from a dugout. The angle is there. Let me say it a better way. There is no worse seat in a baseball ballpark to call balls and strikes than the seat of the manager in a dugout on either the first or third base side. None. Now, there are people with videos. There's the video room who's saying, that was a ball. That was a strike. What a terrible call. But managers in real time, when they're criticizing umpires, they haven't seen anything. They're looking at the reaction of their player, of the hitter, of the catcher, of the pitcher, but they themselves haven't seen it. But your job as a manager is to pretend you see it and then to make an issue if you see your player making an issue. And Devin Williams took out all of his season-long frustration of incompetence and horrific pitching on Brian Walsh, the home plate umpire. Brian Walsh ejected Devin Williams when Devin Williams said something to the effect of, I assume, man, you keep missing balls and strikes. You stink. Now, of course, they said something slightly more colorful. Devin Williams did, got ejected. And when your player gets ejected, as a manager, especially Aaron Boone, you scurry out of the dugout, you run up to the umpire, and you put your finger in his face and you say, this is a bunch of horse hooey. You don't know what you're doing. Be consistent. That's always a good argument to make. When you're arguing balls and strikes and you don't know whether it was a ball or a strike, you just say to the umpire, hey, be more consistent. Call it both ways, man. That's often what they say. So Aaron Boone gets ejected. It turns out that Brian Walsh had a bad day at the office. While Mike Hill will recognize and acknowledge that Brian Walsh had a bad day at the office, he will also say to Aaron Boone and to Brian Cashman and to Randy Levine and to Hal Steinbrenner, dudes, stop with Aaron Boone getting ejected. You're killing me, Smalls. I hate having to keep finding him, but I got to. Now, it's true that Walsh missed 24 calls and that Mike Hill will know that. It's true that 15 of those missed 24 calls went against the Yankees. Mike Hill will know that. However, it's also true that you cannot argue balls and strikes. It's a really simple rule. I don't quite understand why, as a team president, I forgot it all the time, but I forgot that rule more than any other rule. Like 3 strikes and you're out, 3 outs and the inning's over, 4 balls is a walk. Don't pass the runner on the base pass, touch all the bases on a home run. There's a bunch of rules that I keep in my mind. I don't know why I lost on my mind that you can't argue balls and strikes, because when I was president of a team, I would argue balls and strikes. I'd argue it to the GM, then I'd go down and talk to the manager. Sometimes I'd speak to the umpires the next day. Why? What am I doing it for? The thing is about being an umpire, when ABS comes, automated balls and strikes, it's not about replacing the umpire. It's about a challenge system that will just be a check to make sure that more calls are right than are wrong. Austin Wells was the catcher for the Yankees last night, and he was asked about it, and he wants umps to do what players do when they have a bad game. He literally said, we go back, we watch video, we try to get better. I hope that those guys are going to do the same. I like that Austin Wells wants umpires to do that, because umpires do that. Because Major League Baseball, who oversees the umpires, gives every home umpire a report of their game. They go back and study the calls they missed, why they missed it, why they may have been out of position, why they may have been fooled by a catcher, by a framing, by something. So Austin Wells is right to ask umpires to try to get better, because players are always getting better. Umpires take great pain to be better. But definitionally, when you are an umpire, when you're a referee, when you're a line judge, a back judge, a side judge, we'll see it with the NFL, with the season starting tonight, you're not going to get everything right all the time. There is no way, unless you want to just watch and be the U.S. Open, where there's no more people. It's all just robots, AI, and the line is very simple. Out, in. The tennis court looks great when you're watching, Djokovic play, because there's nobody standing around with their hands on their knees. But at the end of the day, I like the human element. Just get it right. Why? Because it's just business. We'll be back tomorrow. This is nothing personal.